Have you ever sat down to write and realized that something just isn't working, but you can't tell why? Do you keep trying the same tricks to get unstuck, only to find that nothing seems to help? Hey, co-authors. In this episode, we take a closer look at writing slumps during the thesis or dissertation process. We explore 5 common slump archetypes and articulate why each one calls for a different way forward. So let's dive in. One of the most frustrating things I think as an instructor is whenever I'm working with someone on their thesis or their dissertation, they have very clear problems in getting out of a writing slump. You give them advice for how to get out of that slump. They do not follow said advice, and then they look at you with the shocked Pikachu look of, couldn't I get my writing done? It's like, well, what did you expect? You didn't do the things I told you to do. Oh my gosh. It reminds me of this story. This happened years ago to me. I had a student who, they're working through their thesis. They come in, they're like, hey, I'm just having a hard time even getting the literature that I want to have into my first draft of my literature review. Okay, well, let's work on that. So I sit down with them and I'm like, okay, what I want you to do is find 10 articles, and in those 10 articles, I want you to just highlight the things that you think are going to be important for your project. And they don't know this yet, but this is a process that I would lead students through. So first they highlight things in the articles. Then after that, they read those highlighted things, and then they copy and paste that highlighted stuff into a document. And that provides a little bit of winnowing there, right? Some of the things get chucked out because you read it again, you're like, maybe not so much important. Then you go across the 10 articles, you find where things are grouped together. Like, okay, that's going to winnow some things out too, because not everything that's important is something that's shared across the articles. And then you can start to build your literature review around those shared themes that you see across the literature. So this is something I've done quite often with students. I just give them the first step, right? Find 10 articles, highlight the things that you think might be important. They're like, well, what if it's not important? Don't worry about that. Right now, we're not worried about if it's important or not. I'm just worried about you just getting out of the slump. So just, highlight away. Don't highlight more than 2 or 3 sentences, right? I don't want pages of things highlighted, but like right now, I'm just trying to get you to do something quickly. So that way you can get on with your project. They're like, okay, so come back the next day. What do you got for me? Well, I don't have anything. Why not? Well, I had this happen, and then I did this other thing, and then I did this other thing, and then I was tired, and so I took a nap, and then I did this other thing, and then my friends came over, and I wanted to do that, and so I didn't want to be rude, so I hung out with them, and then I did this, and then next thing I knew, it was 1 or 2 in the morning. Well, then I was tired, so then I went to sleep, and then I didn't get it done before I came here. Well, I don't really know what to say about this. This seems like a series of bad choices that you've made. And so, whenever you don't follow the advice I give you, lo and behold, you don't make any progress. And so then I have to do a whole nother approach to this, right? Like, it's obvious to me, this is not just a I don't know what to do situation. This is as soon as I start to feel like I'm being intellectually challenged, I just shut down, because I quickly get overwhelmed and I don't know where to go from there. And that is a pretty common experience that I find among thesis and dissertation writers, is that maybe it's very early in the project like this person, maybe it's later in the project, but there will come a time whenever it feels like you just don't have anything left to give. Your tank's on empty, it's been empty for a while, you're irritable and cranky with people, you feel anxious all the time, and all of this is stemming from the fact that that you're in this slump. And so that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about different ways that you get stuck in your thesis or dissertation writing, and then strategies that are unique to each one of those different ways to try to get you unstuck. Okay, so let's dive in.
Are you interested in mastering scholarly writing, developing productivity, and increasing impact, all while staying healthy? Then welcome to the Publishing Academic Research Podcast. My name is Dr. Kyle Ruddick, and I'm a full professor and writing coach who's dedicated to making sure you break through whatever is stopping you from reaching your scholarly goals. I meet so many scholars who have creative, innovative, and daring ideas, but can never seem to get those projects from proposals to print. I want you to get your work in the hands of people who will read it and appreciate it. So let's get into this week's big idea.
So the first thing I want to say before I get into the specific problems here is that everyone hits slumps. Whether you're doing a thesis, dissertation, book, article, grant project, whatever it is, there will come a time whenever you look at yourself in the mirror and just think, what was the series of disaster catastrophes and poor choices that I've made that have led me to this moment, and how in God's name am I supposed to find my way back out again? So if you're feeling that right now, please know that you're not alone. A lot of people get to this point of feeling like there's nothing left to give. But I think that what is important is not whether you get in slumps or not. It's how you react to the slump, right? Some people, they they stop writing, they get a little down on themselves, they get a little behind, and then they immediately start to spiral out. And so I didn't write on Monday. I wake up Tuesday. Now I'm supposed to do whatever I was supposed to do on Tuesday, plus all the Monday stuff that I shirked and didn't do. Oh, well, that seems like a lot. That molehill's looking like a mighty high mountain at this point. Better just put it off and do it on Wednesday. And this just becomes a spiral. And so after a while, the guilt of not doing stuff plus the actual sheer weight of the work that you need to do have combined into this Voltron of shame and guilt and work and everything. And it's too much. And so I think, to me, that it reveals more about a person and their character and their ability to be long-term successful in this job as a professor, if that's what you're wanting to do, or just in life in general, as whenever you're faced with hardship, maybe even failure, do you react in a way that says, heck no, I'm not giving up and I'm going to knuckle down and keep trying things until I find a way to be successful again? Or do you give up? And if you're in the latter, then maybe a thesis or dissertation or being a professor, maybe that ain't for you. But if you're the type of person who, whenever you're challenged, you rise to that challenge. And in fact, those are the moments where you find clarity in your purpose and in the things that you want to do in your life. Whenever you find that moment that the answer doesn't come easily to you, but instead you have to struggle and scrape and fight for it. I think that you are in the right place, you are on the right path, and this is the way that you can get unstuck in order to get on with your life and be the successful person that I know that you can be. So, what then are some types of slumps that we fall into? And because I think it's important that we name these different types so that way we know the exact strategy that we want to have in order to fix them. So the first slump that I would say is what I would call the foggy brain slump. I usually find that this type of slump in and of itself, if it's not connected to anything else, it's usually not chronic. It's usually something that crops up on a particular day. Maybe you didn't get a good night's sleep. Maybe you were studying too hard for another class or doing another project. Maybe you had a little bit too much fun last night. However it is that you do that, and then the next day, you're not the A plus you that you normally are. And so it feels like words are coming out very slowly. It's hard to focus. Nothing that you write sounds good because your body is just in a place where you are emotionally and or physically drained. And so everything just kind of feels like a slog. And I will say that like one of the dangers of this type of slump is that you go to your writing place, you don't get that much done. And so you're like, oh, it was kind of a bad writing day, kind of a bad day for me, whatever. You go home, you do your thing, you go to sleep, you go to the next day. Then the next day it happens again and you get even less done. And then the next day and even less done. And so what's happening is that you keep trying to push yourself to go further, but your body's telling you that you can't. So a couple things on this. First, I can't tell you how many times I've had a student tell me, oh, I just need to buckle down and work hard and then I'll finish this draft or I'll finish this chapter or I'll finish this project, whatever it might be. If those words are escaping your lips, that is a bad sign. There is no such thing as just knuckling down. Your mental and physical health will only allow you to do so much. You can only push yourself so hard and for so long until finally you're just drained. And so if you find yourself a day or two having foggy brain, that's perfectly normal. Maybe it's just a hard day. Maybe it's just a very sort of short-term thing that you're going through. And so you just need to forgive yourself, let yourself be okay with that and move on. But if you find yourself having this chronically, that might speak to a different problem. And we're going to talk about what that problem might look like later. But whenever this happens, again, whenever it's very short term, what I would say is that it's usually a matter of not getting enough rest. So in this case, what I would say is that if this is a part of a short-term, one-off sort of instance, then what you might just need is a little bit more physical activity. And so whether you have like a smartwatch or a smartphone or just something that can keep time, what I would say is you want to make sure that you're giving yourself regular breaks. Get up, walk around, walk for at least 10 minutes, stretch, do the whole thing, go to the restroom, splash some water on your face, whatever it might be. But it's important that you're getting some sort of physical movement, if for no other reason, because that might end up helping you kind of recalibrate your body a little bit and start to relax and help you write a little bit. But at the very least, if you're in a sort of career trajectory that's going to have you sedentary for long periods of time, it's just really hard on your body and it's just just good for you that every 30 minutes, hour or so, you're getting up and walking around and stretching things out, because otherwise you're going to have hunched up shoulders and arched back and weird hip movement, all because you're hunched over your computer like some goblin typing away every day. And it's not good for your body to do that. The second type of slump that I typically see is what I was talking about at the beginning of this, which is the avoidance slump. Oh man, it is both my greatest frustration and my greatest weakness, because this is totally me. And whenever I don't want to do my grading, whenever I don't want to do anything that has anything to do related to my job, I will find 1,000,001 reasons to not do stuff. I think that one of the most insidious parts of this is whenever I see young scholars who are trapped in a state of continuously trying to read things because they're so afraid and so avoidant of actually writing their own words down that it just feels like reading is a safer way of not doing anything, because then I can say to my advisor, well, I'm still working on this, which I mean is technically true. You're reading things for your thesis or your dissertation, but you're never translating that reading into doing something actionable with it. And so again, like my experience at the beginning of this, whenever you're reading, there should be a clear path from that reading to how it makes its way into whatever your writing is. And whenever I work with young scholars, it's usually find 10 things, highlight the things, transfer the things, thematize the things, then write the thing. So if you just find yourself in a state of always just finding things, or you're always just highlighting things, those two areas are necessary but not sufficient in and of themselves to get you to that next level of writing. And so it gives you the appearance of productivity, but it's kind of like having a car in first gear with really, really high RPMs. Yeah, the engine's revving, the needle's in the red, the whole thing's about to blow, but you're not really going that fast. And so all of this usually comes, again, from this fear of doing the hard part, which is actually putting the words on the page and feeling confident in your ability to read and synthesize things and to put them in a way that your reader is going to understand and appreciate. And so in order to protect yourself from your advisor or your committee members or other readers from saying something negative about your work, you just avoid the whole thing. So what I would say is that if you're in the avoidance slump, one of the things that I think exacerbates that is a feeling of time not really being real. I oftentimes talk to early career writers who are very, very stressed out about their thesis or dissertation project. And they're like, oh man, like I felt like I was writing for forever yesterday and I didn't get anything done. Or I thought that I was working on something and I was making good time. Next thing I knew, I looked up and 6 hours had passed and I hadn't really written that much. And all that is because you're so stressed out and you're so overwhelmed that time has become very, very malleable to you. So it's very important to ground yourself and to make sure that you are making sure that you're being mindful of your time in order for you to maximize that time. So what I would say is that if you find yourself sitting for 4 hours to write, but you're only really writing for like 15 minutes because you're just kind of like messing around with other stuff. You do a little reading here, you do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, right? But you're not really staying on task for the whole 4 hours. It's important for you to start building up your repetitions in this. Much like a weightlifter, you don't just start by bench pressing 250 pounds. You start by doing whatever, figuring out what your maximum is, and then from there adding 5, maybe 10 pounds at a time until finally you make it up to the weight that you're trying to get to. So if you find yourself typically in this avoidance slump where you're doing everything but the work in front of you, give yourself a small concrete amount of time. Maybe it's 10 minutes, maybe it's 15 minutes, but start there. 10 minutes on, 10 minutes off. 15 minutes on, 10 minutes off, right? But what you're trying to do is set a watch, set your alarm, set something. So that way it grounds you and forces you to be mindful of time. And then once you do it for so long, maybe a couple of days, maybe even a few weeks, at 10 minutes, 15 minutes, maybe you go up to 20 minutes, right? But start small and then work your way up, because it's really about you learning how to sustain your attention for long periods of time so you don't go back to avoidance strategies. The third type that I see is what I call the perfectionist paralysis slump. And this is a little bit different than the avoidance, because usually with avoidance, you just avoid doing anything. Instead, with this, you'll write something and then rewrite something and then rewrite it again. And then you just continuously tinker with a small amount of writing rather than you completing an entire draft or an entire section and then moving on to the next thing. And this usually comes from a sense of your writing is not good enough. Maybe you've been told that. Maybe you've gotten feedback from your advisor that told you that. I know that I really got into that trap because of that in my dissertation, because I get back my dissertation draft, it would have all of these comments in from my advisor, and then I would be like, okay, well, I can't write, and so then as I wrote, I'd be like, okay, well, I got to go back and tinker with this. Oh, well, let me just make sure that this is fine. Oh, let me do this. And that was all out of insecurity of my writing being good enough. And instead of being comfortable with writing the whole thing, whether that was a section or a chapter, and then going back and editing, I was so insecure that I would keep doing the write something and then rewrite, edit, rewrite, edit, rewrite, edit, rewrite, edit. Well, as you can imagine, your advisor is going to have things for you to quote unquote fix, change, or actually fix, regardless of how many times that you revise it. That's not to say that revision is not important. Editing is important, right? We've talked about this in previous episodes. I think that's where good writing happens. But it is to say, if you find yourself constantly in the state of revision, then that's no good. You've got to move beyond that and start to recognize that that is a strategy born out of insecurity, and start to move to a place where you feel like you can complete sections, complete a chapter, whatever your goal is, and then get into that revision process. So if you find yourself typically in this and that you're just not writing at all, the advice I usually give to writers who struggle with this is to start by drafting the section or the chapter that you want to write in bullet points instead of sentences, and then going back and writing around those bullet points in order for you to have fleshed out good, strong paragraphs. But the reason for that is because I typically find that in bullet point form, I don't really have an expectation for writing quality that I do whenever I'm writing sentences. So I don't look at a bullet point and go, oh, well, I need to tinker with that. Oh, I need to say it this way, not that way. Right? It's a bullet point. Who cares? It's an outline. And so once I get all of those bullet points together, then I can figure out how to smush them together and make a paragraph. Okay, now I can edit, because a paragraph is something that is editable. It should be edited. It should be revised. But bullet points, not so much. That's just about me trying to get content on the page so that way I can get out of the slump and get on to the next thing. The next type that I oftentimes see is what I would call the overwhelmed slump. So I find that writers who deal with this the most with their theses and dissertations are ones that don't really have a firm grasp on what they want their project to be in the first place. And so they read a whole bunch. Oh, that sounds like a good idea. Oh, that's a cool thing too. Maybe I should do that. Maybe I should do this. And then they go talk to their advisor, and their advisor's like, oh, well, yeah, you could try this, or this is a good thing, or I want you to do this. So they got all these ideas. They've got all these tasks, all these things that they want to bring together in their project. And it just ends up being an absolute mess because it's just too much. They don't know where to start. They don't know where to finish. You can even tell in their writing that they just kind of start in the middle of a conversation. They don't really do any work to guide the reader into how they arrived to the place that they were trying to write from or where they're trying to go. Because in their head, it's all happening at the same time, and they're just in a state of cognitive overload. What this usually is an indicator of is just a lack of prioritization, right? You have so many ideas going on, and you don't have a firm grasp of what it is that you want to do, that you don't know how to prioritize what literature to cite, which ones are the more important pieces to hit, where to agree with your advisor, where to gently push back. Instead of you actually making choices about any of those things, you just try to do all the things. Well, you can't do all the things. You've got to graduate. You need to get out of here. You need to get on with your life. You need to get your job. You need to get into your PhD program. You need to do whatever it is that you want to do after this. You don't have time to do all the things. So making sure that you have a clear sense of where you want to go is important. And so the way that I would say to do that is to write a summary of your project in a paragraph. Make it less than 100 words. And in that summary, you should have your main area of investigation, the thing that you're trying to get at. You should have the main framework that you're talking about, and you should have the main method that you're using. Those are the three important things for you to be able to have as you summarize any research project. Okay, you got that? 100 words? Cool. Now edit that down to 50 words. Now edit it down to 25 words. Now see if you can get it down to 10 words. What you're trying to do is to figure out what's the actual important thing out of your research? What is it that is so important that you cannot leave it out if you were to have to tell someone about the research that you're doing? And so as you are moving down and giving yourself less and less words, that is forcing you to make choices about what's the most important thing, which should then clarify what is important in your project and help address this overwhelmed feeling. Because right now you've got so many things going on in your brain. Let's crystallize this. What's actually important? The last thing that I will say, and this I would say in many ways is kind of an Uber type, which is to say that a lot of the types that I've talked about before can be experienced on their own, much like I was saying with the first one. It can be experienced in the short term, it can be experienced on its own, but really all of these can be experienced as a part of a larger burnout slump. So what are some indicators that you're in a burnout slump? Well, first off, as we've been talking about, you have emotional exhaustion. You are just at the point to where it's very hard for you to prioritize what's important, not just in your project, but maybe even in your life. So basic things like, do you take a shower? Do you feed yourself? Are you wearing clothes that are clean? Are your dishes done? Is your house or apartment clean, right? Just the everyday things that just go into being a functioning adult, you find to be less and less important to the point to where they're just not getting done anymore. So that's one indicator. If you feel like you just have no motivation at all in the program, right? You talk to your advisor, they're telling you, oh, if you don't get this done, then you might lose your funding or you might not graduate on time or whatever it might be. And your response to that is meh, and not meh because you have the money to just endlessly pursue your degree because you're independently wealthy. But instead, it doesn't even really register with you because at this point, you're so emotionally drained that you just don't even have any motivation to go on. The last thing is that writing always just seems like an insurmountable mountain. If just the thought of putting any words on the page fills you with existential dread, then again, you're burned out. All of this comes from the chronic stress of maybe interpersonal conflict in your program or with your advisor. Maybe this is the first time that you've ever written on a project for this long and it's just starting to really kind of take its toll. Maybe things aren't working out quite the way that you envisioned with your research design. Maybe your findings aren't there. There's just a million and one things that can lead to this. But what they all have in common is this chronic stress that comes over a long period of time that eventually manifests into you just not being able to write anymore. And so if this is you, what I would say is that first off, you need to give yourself some time to rest. Your body's so highly stressed and so anxious that you just taking off a day or two is not going to help you. At the same time, the problem here is that every day that you take off is a day that you are going to think to yourself, I should be writing. And while on some level that's true, you will not be able to write at all if you are not in a place that you are emotionally and mentally healthy enough to do so. And so it's important then that you take time off in order for you to come back to and focus on your dissertation or your thesis project. And again, I know everyone is screaming at you that you need to get this done on time. You've got this deadline, you've got this, you've got that, but none of that is going to matter if you just end up burning out to the point to where you just cannot even envision writing another word on this project. So it's important for you to not feel like you're giving up. Because if you feel like you're giving up, if you feel like you're just not doing this anymore, then that's going to make you feel like you're a failure and that you don't belong in whatever program that you're in. It's really important then that you find another project that you can work on that is short term, that is different, and that you can complete. Feel the success of that completion and then come back to your dissertation or your thesis project with that success under your belt. What's important for you is that whatever it is that you choose here, A, choose it with your advisor. B, choose something, again, that is short term and has a definite end point. We are not trying to give you an endless series of tasks to make you avoidant, as we were talking about before, avoidant to getting your thesis or your dissertation done. Instead, what we are trying to do is help you recalibrate by getting back to a place where you feel successful. Then you're able to use that success to give yourself the emotional and mental stability to continue to write on your thesis or your dissertation project. The last thing that I will say is that as you go through any of these slumps, what's important for you to remember is that slumps happen to everyone, and slumps are things to be managed, not things to be solved. I cannot tell you how many times I have worked with clients or students who they'll get into a slump. I'll give them some behaviors and some coaching on how to get out of the slump. They get out of they get out of the slump. They get something done, the chapter, the section, whatever it is. They're feeling good. I'm successful. I'm back on track. And I'm like, okay, here's the things that you need to continue to do in order for you to be successful. And they're like, no, I'm good now. I'm fixed. I've got the solution. No, you're not fixed. There's no such thing as fixed. There's only managing. There is managing the chronics. There's managing this project until it's done and managing yourself until it's done. And then you're on to the next project. And maybe that's not a research project. That could be anything. And that's true of anything in life, whether a dissertation, research project, any other large project that you have going on. You will eventually hit a slump. And it is important for you to start developing the skills and habits and dispositions now of whenever I hit this slump, I know that I have strategies to identify it, to address it, and overcome it. It's not to say I will never have to struggle ever again, because that's just not human. Humans struggle. We all do, right? We all have good days. We all have bad days. So it's about how do you manage the bad days in order for you to continue on a trajectory of success? I find that students who engage in that, I'm going to heal myself, I'm solved, they have the hardest time getting things done because they expect productivity and good fortune to be like a switch that's flipped either on or off. And that's magical thinking. That does not serve you. So I think that's going to about wrap it up for me, folks. Again, as you're writing your thesis or dissertation, just know it is a marathon and not a sprint. You're going to be at this for a long time, and you're going to be developing yourself and your skills about how to deal with that type of long-term project as you are also dealing with the actual content and specificity of whatever it is that you're writing. At this point, this is episode 6 of a 10-part series on theses and dissertations. Go back, give those other ones a listen. I also have all sorts of episodes on specific things about writing, like how to write good paragraphs, how to edit your work, and also things about the more emotional or mental side of writing. Give those a listen too. I hope that you find them helpful as you're on your thesis or dissertation journey, because I know from my own experiences that was some of the hardest writing that I ever did. And I really wish that someone had given me some of this advice before I jumped into those things with very little preparation. If you have any questions or anything that you would like to hear about, whether on this topic or other topics related to writing, productivity, academia, any of those things, feel free to reach out. My contact information is in the podcast description and in the episode description. Reach out to me. I'm happy to answer your questions. If you want me to, I can do it on the podcast. I can give you a shout out, or you can remain anonymous. But whatever it is, I just want to make sure that I'm giving you all the best information that I can, so that way you all can be successful and you can rock it in whatever it is that you want to do, whether that's within academia or beyond it. Okay? So thank you so much, and I will see you in next week's episode.
Hey, co-authors, what's stopping your best ideas from becoming your next big publication? Brilliant research shouldn't die in your drafts folder. Now's the time to bridge the gap between the possible and the published. You can support this podcast by subscribing to it, leaving a positive review, assigning it to your classes, or sharing it with a colleague. Let me know what I can do to make this the best podcast resource for you. And if you'd like to know more about my writing coach services, then you can find my information in the podcast description and set up an appointment. I'll be back next week with another episode. But until then, keep healthy, keep writing, and don't let reviewer 2 get you down.